wanted to start with two thanks. First, special thanks for the organization committee, and especially Danny and Avner for making the session about e-commerce happen. When we had the idea of a startup session about e-commerce, it was pretty late in the stage of preparing the agenda for the conference, so I'm glad they made it in and appreciate that. So thanks, Danny, Avner, and everyone. And thanks before you leave for the audience that still stays here in that at that time. I know that this is the last thing that prevents you from going home or have a good shawarma at Ima or something. So appreciate that. My name is Jonathan Schler, and I've been in the data business for over the last 20 years through many different incarnations of it, starting with text and others, spent 10 years in ad tech. And most recently, together with my colleague James Oppenheim, opened Commerce Essentials, which is basically a company working in the field of e-commerce, providing machine learning and data science solutions for companies in that field. We have already over 1,000 clients, and one of the very interesting topics whenever we talk with a client or prospects is they always heard about data science. And they ask, hey, what is data science? How can we use that? But then when we ask them, why do you need it? The answer is pretty weird. Like they don't know why they need data science. It's a hype. Everyone needs it. Everyone needs a data scientist on board. But what do we do with it? It's not very clear to them. So as a result of that, we so-called coined the term D-commerce, which stands for data-driven commerce, data-driven solutions for e-commerce, and trying to make a difference in bringing practical experience of data science to the e-commerce field. Together on stage here, we have a few of the thought leaders in the field of e-commerce and fintech that are going to share with the audiences here, and maybe the ones that are viewing it on video.
With all of us?
All of you. Some of their experience and how they use data science for their customers. So I'll start probably with Eyal sitting near to me. So Eyal, please tell the audience a bit about yourself, your company, and what your company is doing with data science.
Sure. So hi, Eyal Lenksner, co-founder and CTO at Feedvisor. Actually, my history is pretty much similar to Jonathan's. We learned together in Bar-Ilan University. So I also have been in the data science, data analytics world for some time. In several words about Feedvisor. Feedvisor provides services of intelligence optimization for online merchants. On the intelligence part, we try to identify trends, insights, things that may be impactful on the merchant's strategies, business performance. On the optimization side, we do automatic pricing, trying to find optimal prices for maximizing profit or other target functions, trying to understand the competitive edge of a given merchant over his competitors, in order to understand how indeed we can maximize profit, sales, and other targets. In addition, in the optimization category, we're doing inventory-related optimization, trying to understand and recommend which products a merchant should replenish, order more, at which prices, how many pieces, and so on and so forth. Inventory decisions are crucial for online merchants in general, and they have to be very precise in these decisions. So that is our world, Feedvisor's world. A lot of e-commerce data, a lot of data science going on there, and we're continuing to learn.
Great. So sitting next to these guys, I feel eminently inadequate, but my name is Zach Miller. I run a site called Trade Streaming. It is the homepage of the financial industry. I've been an entrepreneur in Israel for the past 12 years and worked with a lot of the cutting edge on the consumer side in fintech. Trade Streaming is my sort of labor of love. We just closed a small seed round, and the idea there is to follow trends and how technology is actually impacting the business of finance. So while I'm not a data scientist, we definitely cover big data and the solutions within the financial industry, as it plays a big role in sort of both on the entrepreneurial side as well as on the financial incumbent side. So I'm here as sort of an analyst, call it.
Hi, I'm Robbie. I run engineering for Couchbase. Couchbase is a modern rethink of what a database ought to be, given the shift in technology that's happening. And this is one of those which was built for performance at scale first and then improved for other feature functionality. So this is in the middle of a lot of mission-critical deployments in across the various industries. E-commerce examples would be like Apple and eBay and Walmart and places like that, and financial industry, Citibank and Wells Fargo and other areas like that, and streaming media, mainframe offloading. There are many mission-critical deployments along with mobile deployments where airlines use this very heavily. Transportation industry, which is, I shouldn't call it just industry, transportation sites, Amadeus and Orbitz and others. So it's a sort of a broad-based technology platform, database platform that is used for mission-critical deployments, and we are lucky to have some very serious business transacted using our technology and enabling a lot of other e-commerce along the way. So that in a nutshell is what Couchbase is and what I do for Couchbase.
Hi, my name. Yeah, I think it worked. My name is Asaf Feldman. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Riskified. We are a fraud detection solution for e-commerce, basically targeting fraud in credit cards. So we have the essential technology is machine learning algorithms that can look at the transaction and try to catch if the person doing the order is the actual holder of the card or holder of the PayPal account. My background is more on the financial side of machine learning. I picked up machine learning 10 years ago in MIT and worked for a while in algo trading and stuff like that, and applied it to fraud detection in the last 3.5 years.
Thanks. So while data science is a cool topic, and when we start to sell our solution before we get a brand out of that, there are many challenges when we come to a client and say, hey, we have a really good data solution that does something for you. So maybe you want to share some of the challenges that you face and how you overcame them when coming to new clients and proposing a new solution.
So FeedVisor provides a solution which is rather expensive in the market compared to other solutions. So I think one of the main challenges is to try to understand or make our clients understand why they should put more money into the solution. What many times happens is that clients would go to the less expensive solutions and then come to us a little bit more cooked. They do understand that the world of e-commerce is getting more and more dynamic, more and more complex. For example, our Amazon sellers selling on Amazon have to compete for a given product sometimes with 50, even more competitors, each one changing prices every several minutes. So they understand that this world is complex. We just need to convince them that it's worth paying the money that they're paying. So I think that is our main challenge.
They trust your solution, it's just about the money?
It's actually very, very easy to prove. Either we're improving their business performance or not. If we're not, they're out of there in 2 weeks after the trial. So in that case, it's pretty straightforward.
So while I'm not selling anything directly to financial companies, I can say that when you meet anybody at Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, they define themselves as technology companies. It's really interesting, like from junior people to senior people at Goldman Sachs, they always seem to say that they have more engineers on staff than Facebook. So I think one of the challenges, at least that I've seen for startups or solutions providers selling into some of these companies, is that they believe they can build a lot of this stuff themselves. I mean, they have thousands of engineers on staff. Even if you partner with them, you can be pretty sure that they're working on their own solutions in the background. And so I think that's one of the challenges. Jamie Dimon, the CEO and chairman of JP Morgan, was on a podcast last week, and someone asked him about payments. And he said, well, there's a lot going on in the startup world, but I expect to win in payments. That was how he said. So I think it's really hard convincing them that you have a solution that they can't build in-house. And so there have been some partnerships. JP Morgan signed a partnership with a company called OnDeck to get into online lending. I'm sure they're still working on their own online lending product, but a lot of the big data and stuff that they're doing is being grown in-house.
Let me see if this works. This is on, okay, so that way others can use it. Thanks. So from our perspective, the basic thing that we see that's happening, if you really define what is happening in this digital commerce, is that it's about two things. It's about enabling that user, and the other thing is bringing a lot of the stuff that was considered back office directly to the user. It's about transforming the back office and immediately bringing it to the attention of the user, or transactable by the user. As an example, if you have, let's say if you're an e-commerce selling site and you're going to, let's say, and you sell, one of the products that you're selling is golf clubs. And if the golf manufacturer of one of those clubs adds 2 different shaft types or something to it, earlier it would take you a while before that goes into the inventory system, which is then pushed through ERP before it can come available through a site from which you can order. Now you can do that instantaneously. The moment that inventory is added, immediately that is brought to the end user so that you can place the order on that. That time that it has taken for whatever your inventory control system to be exposed to the end user has become now hours or seconds, not days and weeks. So that's the digital commerce transformation. When you do that, all those infrastructure that you had for your back office systems do no longer scale, because now immediately you have 200 million users or 100 million users sort of transacting or acting concurrently on a system. All the older systems are not built for this. They were built for enterprise applications, which could be basically maybe hundreds of thousands of users at the maximum, not for millions or hundreds of millions of users with 100 million user concurrency. So the platform, Couchbase, sort of sells itself, because when they do comparison, there are so many options out there. Few of them bubble up. The most famous lineup eventually ends up being Mongo DataStax, Couchbase, and finally we find that the evaluation, Couchbase technically wins, and the rest is up to the rest of the politics of the organization, whether Couchbase eventually becomes the final sort of a sale or not. But more often than not, that is the case. But every technology comparison, because of the purity of architecture, it sort of wins. So the real challenges we face is, first, they themselves are not convinced as to what is the size and scale that they need at the beginning. So they flounder, make a mistake saying that I've already come way far from my older systems by using some NoSQL solution. And they build it, they go to a point after which the big guys take over and say, well, can I run my mission critical application on this one? And that hits further problems, at which point our consulting and our technologists, me included, sometimes have to go explain to them why, when you build it on this one, it'll scale to the numbers that you're really looking for, and what are the advantages, and why, like Zach was mentioning, why they should pay for it, why not build it themselves. So I tell them, how many PhDs do you have in staff who can do distributed computing? On top of it, stand up a database, and I can tell you differential, not just differential calculus, I can do the relational calculus on which my query language is built. When they understand all that it takes, then they realize that there is value in this stuff. Otherwise, they feel like they can hack it themselves. And many have tried to and have failed. So one of the sort of transformation that's happening is that along with all this stuff, people also see a lot of open source software being available. They feel like they can sort of take it and do something themselves. 98% of them do not have the staff even if they have the staff or the capability, their focus is not building databases and distributed systems. So they can fake it, but eventually they'll land in a whole world of hurt. And some have, and they would come back and use the right product, because it's somebody's discipline to build and support a database which can run in hundreds of nodes, and how to manage it and how to sort of curate it. That cannot be a side job of a financial company or a retail company. It has to be a technology company which is actually building it. And so sometimes in this digital divide, knowledge is a gap through which people fall through the crack. And we have seen some, and some more often than not we succeed.
So essentially you're saying that while the technology is available, it's open source, everyone can use it, the know-how is really also what makes the difference, especially in data science. And there is a gap for people to get that it's not only about the tools that we can use, it's also how to use them, how to apply them, and how to make them work for our needs.
Correct. I mean, and there are multiple ways you can skin the cat. You don't know, because there's a fundamental shift, which is people talk about this unstructured data. At the end of the day, people talk about digital economy and unstructured data. If you really ask somebody, many of the data scientists here, what is that one foundational transformation, nobody will give you a straight answer. Let me give you my hypothesis on it. There's only one fundamental transformation, is that this whole data is nothing but JSON. The entire web transacts on JSON. If you know how to manage that, store that, harness that, and find intelligence in that, you'll go a long way. The rest of this talk about streaming media, this, that, there's nothing in there to introspect. But there is tons sitting inside a JSON. Now, JSON has transformed the data structure from being a relational tuple, which is a table and a column, to a nested recursive data model. That's what it is. Because in a JSON, you can keep your object definition in one place, as opposed to splitting it. This is the object relational impedance mismatch, as they would call it. Esther Dyson said that if you're going to store an object in a table, it's like disassembling your car every evening to put it in the garage. Of course, next day morning you can reassemble and drive it, but is that the most efficient way of doing it? So that's what people are doing right now, to take a JSON, which is what the web tier is interfacing on, and eventually just to store it on disk, you make it into a table and a column, tear it apart, put it inside, and then just to show it back in the object form, you reassemble it. That whole impedance goes away when you use a JSON database, so to say. That is the foundational difference as to what is the data structure. The data model has completely changed. And rest of the key value systems and all act like a file system. You cannot look inside the JSON. So it's something what we have built with a secondary indexing and a query language on top of it. You can look inside that. Yes, there is a lot of other sort of data which is sort of shared. Many sites allow you to sign in using Facebook or Google. So in those situations, those are all shared. I mean, your profile is now, everybody and their uncle knows about, your personal data. People don't even know what is it that they're truly sharing. There is, I think at some point, legislation and stuff like that will come about data privacy and security. But within given domains, there is sort of enough oversight. Like we have a lot of e-commerce companies which have PCI compliance, healthcare companies which have their HIPAA compliance and stuff like that. So wherever it's well established, people play to those norms. But still, when they start integrating with the rest of the systems, I don't know how much fuzziness is in there and where data. So intentionally, who's going to share the data? I think the governments will have to do something there first. I mean to say, census data is out there in public like that. I know there are a few big data samples that are floating out there, airline sort of reservation data and stuff like that. I think that's how it'll begin to that. People will add their maybe a credit card company might add something to it in terms of how many transactions went through them. And that's how things will sort of move forward. But right now, if you ask, early days in terms of people openly sharing their data.
It's early days. I think in many ways it reminds me of the early days of open source in a way, that everyone was very protective about their IP.
Correct.
And we start to get to open source more and more stuff and see the benefits of that. But I agree, it's early days for that. Asaf.
There is actually some instances in fraud-related markets where data is shared, namely data of fraudsters. This is something that nobody really cares about, just keeping it there. And there are, especially inside some sub-industries, like the airline industry really keeps there's a whole database of fraud happening in travel industry and shared among all the airlines. And so I think people are willing to kind of share that because there's obviously just bad people data, and they don't really want to hurt their competitors by just getting them hurt. Fraud is bad for everybody. But some data I don't think we'll ever share. Our decisions is our goal. This is how we train the models. If we say how we decided on stuff, I don't see us giving that away ever.
Thanks, everyone. I'll turn to the audience if any questions.
I've got a question. Has anybody? I've got a question. Okay, this is going to be an exceptionally, I'm giving you a heads up, a self-serving question because I really want you guys' advice. You all have a lot of experience, and I would love to hear your feedback. We're in front of a real big company right now. And one of the questions that we got, and I'd love your feedback on it. Here's the key question that he had. What unique leverage can a vendor have that we can't eventually do internally? So we've all dealt with those questions before. And particularly in the data space, it seems like it's the field itself is so arcane. And I share your pain, Zach, what you're saying is being in this crowd, knowing that these guys are operating a bit at a different level. But what do startups say? What should be the language that we use when we're in front of, and I'm sure you're feeling it as well, some really big companies with a room full of engineers and data scientists, et cetera. And at the end of the day, it's wait a second, you guys are really? You're a startup, 20, 30 people? What do you have to teach us? Why should we even look at you rather than look at what we can do internally? So I want to just kind of put that out as a question and get your advice.
I think for me, it's really easy. We keep on telling them, we have 20 people doing one thing. We're doing just fraud detection. And it doesn't matter if it's Best Buy or Foot Locker, Okay, so they have hundreds of people, but they have thousands of problems to solve, and becoming an expert in fraud detection is something that they can't afford. If they put 20 people, 30 people, 50 people on every such problem, they're going to be, instead of 5,000, they're going to have 10,000 employees, and our expertise in that are also over many more years. So it will take them 5 years to even build that force, and the specialization is just critical. So if you have the focus, you can do it just better.
So my take on this is that in order to build great technology, there's kind of a triangle of data, people, and methods or algorithms. Now, if you want to reach that great technology, you have to invest in all three parts of that triangle. And I'm not sure that every company, even if large, is able to invest in those directions. It's not only the money, it's the know-how, how to bring these people, how to research, and so on. For example, in the data aspect, in order to reach great models, data science models, machine learning models, it's not enough to obtain your own information and learn by that. You would rather obtain information from that seller, in our case, from that seller and this seller. And up to date, we have hundreds of online merchants, some very, very large, selling online, and only in the fusion of all this data, you can indeed reach the models and algorithms that we are reaching. I'll give an example. We have tried to reach a model which tries to estimate what is the demand level for a given product in a given marketplace in a given day, okay? For example, how many cellular phones of Samsung S5 were sold yesterday on Amazon? Now, we could have not reached this solution or this model with one customer's data. We needed this massive set of data in order to reach this model. And once we have reached the model, we can do many, many things. For example, what I talked about before, inventory optimization, pricing optimization, and other neat things that others can't do up to date.
This is always, well, I've been in Silicon Valley 25 years. So there are serious companies that have a full-on solution, and there are companies which have point solutions. And the point solutions always have some trick, which is an algorithm or some uniqueness. They always get subsumed by the one who's got the full-on picture. I mean, integrated solution. So there is a lot of that happens in this sort of data science world where people I have this model versus that model. And if you just drink your own Kool-Aid, you run into that problem because other guy definitely has now the upper hand to say, I can do that too. You have 4 PhDs, I can hire 40 PhDs. But if you have a solution which is sort of broad, which builds one on top of the other, and now you're able to articulate a broad platform or a solution or a broad spectrum framework or a toolkit through which you can solve a whole bunch of issues, then that has enough value where they say, I cannot build all this stuff by just assembling people because it takes a set of people with different sets of skill sets, and they've come together to provide this solution, which is thought through all the way from performance and scale and security and functionality, and I can transact or I can do something very tangible, very big, which otherwise I'll have to invest in all those areas which are not core to my business. So if you come to that realization, typically we don't have this argument with our customers. Some of the largest customers that we have who have written few million dollar checks to us, they have themselves published papers in databases. They have teams like that, but they know they can't build what we have built. They themselves say that. And that is simply because these things are not easy to build, and so it takes a little time, and they know the time and the effort it takes, and that it is not their core competence, and they also at the same time do not perhaps want to take on the responsibility of supporting this over periods of time and then innovate on top of that. So it finally comes down to, is the solution broad-based enough? If it is a point solution, the same thing happens in Silicon Valley also. It's nothing to do with big companies. Smaller companies get bought by bigger companies. If somebody can buy 3 smaller companies and together form a meteor solution, that's what happens. So feature companies versus broad platform companies was the original point I was making. So the same, if you see the other side, if the other guy feels like I can do the same point by it's a matter of human resource or something like that, then that doesn't go too far. That becomes an argument, or that becomes one of those contentious things. But if they see the value proposition, which is broad enough, which gives them all the benefit, and that brings them tangibly only 2 things: time to market of whatever that is that they are trying to sell, and efficiencies. Earlier it used to take me blah, now it takes me only a fraction of that. So at the end of the day, it is commerce that they need to see value in this. And if those 2 things match, then I think even they don't argue. Even if you say it's an open source thing, but you don't have all these things, who's going to stand behind this? If you have one issue, the community is going to give you a fix that could be 3 months, versus if you're a supported customer, tomorrow we can stand behind and do this. I'm just giving you a very simplistic example. So those are the situations where people do not argue once they see the total value of the platform. But it's got to be broad-based enough where they can solve multiple problems, not just one problem. And that's sort of our experience at this point.
Anyone else? I want to thank to the panelists and to the audience.
Thanks to the audience mainly.
Have a good evening, everyone.